Welcome to Busy Research, the podcast where business meets data and insights drive success. I'm your host, Vicki McCarthy, Director of the Center for Applied Business Research at Austin Peay State University. On this podcast, we get busy learning about how applied business research can improve business decision making. Today, we're talking to Robin Householder, President and CEO of the Better Business Bureau, BBB, serving Middle Tennessee and Southern Kentucky. Robin, with over 30 years at the Better Business Bureau, is a seasoned professional, well-versed in the intricate dance between business and the BBB. Welcome, Robin.
Well, thank you so very much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So let's dive right in. For our listeners who might not be familiar, could you give us a brief overview of the Better Business Bureau and its mission in the business world?
Sure. So Better Business Bureaus have been around, believe it or not, since the early 1900s. And initially, the organization was formed by a lot of businesses who were concerned that advertising at its best was fictional. And how could they help consumers sort of work through the mirage of bad data to make wiser buying decisions? And so if you think of the old snake oil salesman type mentality, that was what was happening in the early 1900s. And so over time, BBBs not only continued to work in that advertising review space and helping businesses understand what they should and shouldn't say, as well as helping consumers understand what to look for. Really, it became an organization that's solely focused on advancing trust in the marketplace. And we do that through education. We do that through providing information so that businesses and consumers can make wise buying decisions. We assist businesses in establishing best practices. We certainly are a conduit, if you will, for dispute resolution. So both businesses and consumers know they can come to us for assistance when, for whatever reason, they've not been able to work through a solution independently. So whether that's just through reconciliation, where we're getting both parties to communicate, or oftentimes it can go to mediation or arbitration. But a big part of what we're doing is what we like to call recognizing marketplace role models, meaning that we're giving you credit for being one of the good guys. And so through BBB accreditation, companies agree to abide by 8 standards of trust. And that's everything from honoring promises to being transparent about their transactions to ensuring safeguarding privacy on the web. And so when companies come to us interested in being recognized, they do go through a very thorough vetting process to ensure that they, in fact, do meet our standards. And then that allows consumers to know that we've checked them out so they don't have to. They can rely on our information to be factual and up to date each day.
That's very interesting. I didn't have any idea of the background for the BBB, so I appreciate that information. And I have always been curious about the accreditation for business and the BBB, because today we have lots of different, reviews out there, Google review, Yelp. And so oftentimes I wonder what differentiates the BBB accreditation from the Google reviews or Yelp. So that's very helpful, knowing about the steps for businesses that you recognize as role models in the marketplace. Because trust...
I'm sorry, Lizzie.
No,
what I was going to say is, but keep in mind, we are reporting on all businesses regardless of accreditation. And so we're still evaluating how those organizations operate within the community and tracking information on them. Now, one of the things that is a big differentiator for us is that all of the data that you see on a business profile at bbb.org has been fact-checked. And so whether it's a name, an address, the nature of the industry they're in, if they're required to be licensed, BBB is constantly reviewing that information to ensure that anyone considering doing business with an organization has accurate data to work from. You mentioned customer reviews. Mm-hmm. One of the things that's very different about how BBB handles reviews is that we ensure that when a review is submitted, that there's actually been a marketplace transaction for that customer in that business. And so that review does not get published until we've been able to validate that this, in fact, is a legitimate customer that has had interaction with this particular business, be it a positive review or a negative. And so our reviews are ranked very, very high simply because, again, of that second step, that second layer to ensure the validity of each and every one of them.
Ah, I see. Okay, and that I think has been the biggest question. If there is a disconnect between the review through BBB and maybe what's out there on Google or Yelp or some other type of marketplace review.
Right.
So that I appreciate that, how you cleared that up. So we know we have a lot of business savvy listeners out there, and I appreciate you starting to explain the difference between the Better Business Bureau and its role in American businesses. One of the things I'd like to kind of get into now is, what advice do you have for, first we'll start with businesses as they engage with the Better Business Bureau, I apologize, and also in the marketplace of building trust with potential consumers and current customers?
Sure. Well, trust is probably the most valuable tool any business can have. And of course, that's created over time. But it's also the thing that consumers have elicited, meaning that they've really lost trust in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. We've seen a significant downturn in statistics that show how the buying public trusts organizations. Prior to the pandemic, the Trust Barometer was saying about every 7 out of 10 transactions, the consumer assumes that they can trust. Well, that's dropped below 50%. So now consumers are going into transactions assuming that 6 out of 10 will in fact be untrusted. And so that's troubling. And so what we want to do is ensure that anything and everything the BBB can do to help manage online reputation and give businesses credit for doing things right. That's really our sole focus. It's about helping businesses be better and ensuring that folks know how to identify that better business. And so one example that we work with businesses on is how they respond to customers. It's always troubling when you get a negative review. You have a consumer that's not happy with you or the service you provided. And so what we counsel businesses on is, when you're writing that response, don't write it to the person that wrote the review. Write it to the next 500 people that are going to see your response. And so it shouldn't be a venue that's used for arguing. It should be a venue to be empathetic to the consumer's concern, and then also really spotlight how you resolve concerns. And so that allows that next customer that sees that review to know that you're committed to customer satisfaction, that you're willing to resolve concerns, and that if they do business with you and have a concern, that you're open to hearing that concern and addressing it as needed. So that's just one example that we do. We also believe in self-governance. And so, BBB is a membership organization. And so companies that come on board as an accredited member, really what they're saying is, we're going to do things right because it's the right thing to do. But how does our potential customer know that? Well, that's what accreditation is about, is it's giving you that credit. It's giving you that recognition for being committed to these 8 standards of trust. And so we want to ensure that businesses know how to market that. And so they should be including their BBB logo in all of their marketing. They should have it on their website. BBB is never going to be a reason for a potential customer to say no, but it is always going to be an element of why they're willing to say yes, because they trust us, which then that transfers then to that business. And then, occasionally when an existing accredited business does have a problem, our goal is not to say who's right or who's wrong, or to ding someone for making a mistake, but it's just to help them find solutions so that you can work through. So it's why we call complaint handling, which we really don't like that word complaint. What we really like to refer to it as is alternative dispute resolution. Again, the focus is always on finding the solution, not the blame.
So, what advice do you have for consumers if they're looking into different businesses, looking at the ratings from the BBB, and they do have a complaint, and they do want to use your services to help resolve that complaint? Is there a better? You talked about the businesses and how they would approach resolving a dispute. But what about a consumer? What are some things that they may want to know?
Well, and before we address complaints again, realize that my office, which covers 45 counties, we provide over 3 million instances of service every year to the buying public and to the business community. A very tiny part of that is disputes. Less than 14,000 of those interactions are disputes. So the real focus is on what we like to refer to as pre-purchase buying decisions, meaning come to us first, find that reputable firm that has a proven and positive track record in the community so that you don't necessarily need to come back to us after. Again, disputes is a very tiny part of what we're doing, and unfortunately oftentimes gets the most airtime, if you will. And so from a business perspective, we want them to use us as an extension of their customer service department, an extension of their marketing department, an extension of their education department. For the consumer, it's similar in that, come to us first, do your homework. Unfortunately, we're in a society now where we love instant gratification. Our phones give us information in a split second. We're able to buy things and have it dropped off at our door the next day, sometimes the same day. And so we've lost the art of patience in many things. And patience is really the greatest asset we have to protect us from bad transactions. And so if we can all just slow down a bit and do our homework, check bbb.org to see what the history of that organization is, get some references so that you can talk to others that have engaged with this particular business, ask for referrals from your friends and your family that you trust, take some time to sort of get all of that information together, and then make that wise buying decision. And if you have questions about the types of things you should know as it relates to this particular industry, well, of course, we can help you with that. We all know recently that Clarksville suffered those horrible tornadoes. And so BBB acts as a resource to help consumers understand, okay, now that my home is damaged, what do I do next? And so we can take them through that. How do you respond to a natural disaster? Who do you need to contact first, second, third? How do you ensure that you're not dealing with someone that's a storm chaser? And so that's an extreme example. But for example, I just recently put new windows in our farm, okay? And so what did that process look like? What does a consumer that doesn't work at the BBB need to know? And so because I'm here, I knew that there were 6 or 7 things that I wanted to be sure that I completed before I actually signed on the dotted line with a contract. And those are things consumers can help us. We can help consumers. So if you're not seeing what you need at bbb.org, don't hesitate to give us a call and let us talk you through those best practices in that type of a transaction. Because again, the ultimate goal is for you not to need to have help with a dispute later, but to make that great buying decision that is a true positive interaction.
Wow, I love that. And I love how you talked about research, because that's what this podcast is all about. But that adding in that element of patience, because it does take patience, and it takes time. And I'm learning a lot right now as we're speaking, but just the point that you made, that if you do the research on the front end and you have patience, get referrals, talk to people, then that causes less disputes.
Absolutely. If you're going to spend, whether you're spending $500 or $50,000, that extra 20 or 30 or 40 minutes that you spend doing some homework on it is going to save you hours of headaches and potentially lost funds. And so it's just so important to not choose the very first thing that pops up in your Google search. But again, take some time. One of the scams that is so heavily perpetrated not only across the country, but what we have a lot of issues with around Fort Campbell is puppy scams. And so, who doesn't love a sweet new puppy to bring home to their wife or their husband or their kids? Well, unfortunately, puppy scams add up to about $4 billion in lost monies across North America. And it's because of that instant gratification. We go online. The most popular dog today is a French Bulldog. We do a search for French Bulldog. Well, the first thing you're going to see is an ad for a French Bulldog that unfortunately is priced at that's way below market value. So of course it's going to get you excited that you're going to be able to maybe save $1,500 or $500. Well, guess what? That puppy doesn't exist. But because we're so used to making decisions quickly, we're going to buy that dog. And unfortunately, that dog's never going to be delivered. Or you're going to be asked to submit additional fees for shipping or medical report, medical records, things like that. We had a soldier last year lose about $900 in a puppy scam. And it was all because he wanted to make a quick decision, and he was excited about a price that was just simply too good to be true. And so again, had he spent more time, that wouldn't have happened, and he'd still have that $900 in his pocket.
That's a great example. I had no idea that was going, but it makes sense because
Sure.
you do quickly when it's your heartstrings that are being pulled, like in a puppy case,
Right.
want to, but you hit the nail on the head. It's too good to be true, right? So if you see it's
Right.
too good to be true,
Right.
most likely it is.
Exactly.
So the Better Business Bureau sounds like it is doing some very valuable work. And so as we wrap up, what advice do you have for businesses that want to maintain a positive relationship with the BBB? And you spoke a little bit about this before in terms of the different trust factors and how they're certified. But what else do you think they could be doing to not just joining as a member, getting certified, but maintaining that relationship?
The most important thing is being responsive. When we see a company whose rating starts to go down or that we start to struggle with, it's typically because they don't respond to the communications that we reach out to. And again, our interest is not functioning as a big brother telling you what to do or not to do, but to just keep the information flowing, because as I'm sure you know, especially in the business school, communication solves just about everything. And so when communication stops, that's when you start to see problems. And so see us as an ally in a way to make your business stronger. Again, we are not a police organization. We are not a consumer advocacy organization. We are a trust advocate. And so everything we do is designed to benefit the entire marketplace, not just one segment like a consumer and or a business. And when businesses thrive, that means a stronger marketplace, a stronger economy, everybody wins. It's one of the reasons why we put so much energy into all of the education programs and resources, because we know if we can support businesses to be better, the consumer automatically wins.
Well, thank you again for demystifying the role of the BBB and its relationship with businesses and consumers, as you have highlighted there. This has been an enlightening conversation.
Well, I am very grateful that you had me. And again, anytime anybody has a question, please don't hesitate to have them reach out and talk to us. We'll be happy to help.
Thank you to our listeners for tuning in to another episode of Busy Research. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. We'll catch you in the next episode of Busy Research. Until then, stay curious and busy.